quick introduction, a couple of minutes. I'll go over some of the practical things and a little bit about Startup Grind. Then we'll jump right into fireside chat with Erik, where we'll be questioning, asking, and exploring his journey and Norrsken's journey in the impact sector. And then we'll open the house in the last 15 to 20 minutes and get on to your questions and your observations about the chat. This would not have been possible without our partners. So we are very thankful to Make Trade, Sweden on the Go, Companion Stockholm, and Devrel Events for making it happen. And a big thank you to the Stockholm chapter's team. Ule is here as my co-director in Startup Grind Stockholm. We have Jens as our mentor. He runs the Hong Kong chapter as the director, but he is with us for a few months to help the Stockholm chapter kind of excel expectations. We have Amanda, who runs a fashion and an impact startup. She is ambassador and social media lead, and Marina is here. She runs the consulting on Go Beyond 2030. It's an impact consulting organization. I was thinking, why don't we start a little bit about you, Erik? Would you like to tell our audience about yourself a little bit? Yeah.
Yeah, sure. So, hi everyone. It's a great pleasure to be here. My background: I grew up in Stockholm. My mother was a teacher, and my father was a doctor. And everything I did when I was a kid was to focus at excelling at school. So I was like this ultra nerd who loved books more than anything, and spent every waking minute reading as much as I could, and also a little bit of sports. And then I got lucky. I got a scholarship to go to the UK and study for a year. Came back, went to the Stockholm School of Economics, and then worked as a consultant. I guess a pattern in my life is that I have no idea what I'm going to do the next year, and becoming a consultant is just a way to postpone that decision of what to focus on. One of my clients when I was a consultant was Klarna, and I also knew the founders of Klarna from Stockholm School of Economics. But so I joined Klarna. I loved it. I was part of the management team for some time and helped launch the business in the US. So set up the office in New York. And for the past 4 years, I've been at Norrsken.
Okay, brilliant. So Klarna was your first job, like the real hectic job?
No, I would say the consultant. I was a consultant for maybe 7 years before Klarna. So I learned a little bit before joining. But I guess also when you're at Klarna, I feel like 1 year there feels like 10 years anywhere else, because it's so intense and high tempo and there's so much happening, and you get thrown into different challenges and different geographies and different problems. So you learn a lot there. So yeah, I probably learned more at Klarna in 1 year than I did as 8 years as a consultant before that.
Okay. And Klarna now, it's a leading fintech company. Like it's growing like anything right now. How would you see your switch from Klarna to Norrsken? What are the commonalities and what are the differences?
Yeah. So I really loved my time at Klarna, and still some of my best friends work there. And what happened for me, throughout my life, I always built my self-esteem and self-conscious perception of myself based on like performing at work or in school. And when I came to Klarna, I was, you just work hard and you get the appreciation for that. And I thought I would be there for the rest of my life, because I was succeeding quite well, and I was sent to the US and set up the office there. But then one day out of the blue, actually, I found out that I had colon cancer. I just did a random test, and they found cancer cells in a biopsy. And while I loved it at Klarna, I was, when you get that kind of diagnosis, you start to think about what am I going to do with the time I have left? You don't know if you're going to live for 2 months or 2 years or 20 years. But I decided that however long I had left, I have to do something that is a little bit more meaningful than just making e-commerce run a little bit smoother. So I left Klarna, and Niklas, who was one of the founders of Klarna, had this idea that maybe we can leverage the experience and knowledge that we gain from fast-growing tech companies. But instead of just, optimizing payments for e-commerce, maybe we can use that skill to solve real societal and environmental problems. So really taking entrepreneurship to focus on impact. And for me, that sounded perfect, because The other option for me would have been to go, to the Red Cross or Save the Children or something like that, which was basically all I knew about the impact at the time. And I think they're doing incredible, important work and really contributing to a better world. But I don't think my skills would have been used in an optimal way there. So when Niklas had this idea of Norrsken, of combining entrepreneurship, technology, and impact, that really resonated with me. And I think what's common between Klarna and Norrsken is just that it's a very fast tempo here at Norrsken. We focus on getting things done. We love to just try things rather than building massive strategies, and like it's almost like we're thinking while running at the same time. So that's one thing, and the other is that Klarna had a really big focus on recruiting exceptional people, and we tried to do the same thing here at Norrsken, and we've been very fortunate to build an incredible team here, and that's something we were inspired by from Klarna as well. And then one thing that Klarna always relentless focus on scale, and that's something that we want to do here at Norrsken too, because when you think about how to be as impactful as possible, when Niklas donated quite a lot of money to Norrsken, and if you look at how to use that money as effectively as possible today, it's actually some organizations like GiveWell who've calculated, what can that money be used for as effectively as possible today? And that's buying malaria mosquito nets. So unless we are more effective long term than malaria mosquito nets, then everything we do here at Norrsken is just a stupid joke or a stupid play. We have to long term be more effective than that. And the only way for us to do that is to reach scale quickly, so exponential scale long term through our operations. So we have this same focus as Klarna on being fast, working hard, and reaching massive scale with the impact that we're trying to accomplish.
But that's really, really good insight. And I think your personal linkage in something that you believe in now, I think that then reflects, if people are joining something and there is a strong belief, it is a win-win. So I think that kind of worked, and that is continuing to work. And something for our attendees as well, 3 very interesting lessons so far. Number 1, fast tempo. Number 2, exceptional team. And number 3, scalability. So those are the commonalities between Norrsken and Klarna. And I think that's where the impact sector needs to help. So if you are building your ventures, think of tempo, think of building a strong team, and think of scalability. Brilliant.
Summarized. And then there's one more thing, actually, because walking to work today, listening to the radio, I realized that it's the Nobel Prize Day, right? Today is when the Nobel laureates are awarded the Nobel Prize. And one thing that we thought about a lot when we started Norrsken was that the people that are celebrated the most in society today, today we celebrate scientists, and they get the spotlight for 24 hours, basically. And maybe that will help a few kids develop a passion for physics or chemistry or biology. But the rest of the year, 355 other days, we celebrate Instagram stars or sports celebrities or TV stars or movies. Those are like the heroes of society today. And we were thinking about what would happen if we in fact celebrated people who are solving real meaningful problems rather than just working with entertainment. What would happen if we changed the spotlight to impact entrepreneurs instead, and put them on a pedestal or celebrated their work in the same way that we celebrate rock stars and celebrities? And what was clear from Klarna was that entrepreneurs, tech entrepreneurs, were starting to be celebrated similarly to celebrities almost. They read the founder genesis and this brilliant founder all the time, and that person is celebrated, and you forget that there's a massive teams, but it's but what would happen if we celebrated impact entrepreneurs in the same way? And what would happen if we got all the fantastic brains and legs and hands and feet from universities to go to impact companies instead of just tech companies or other things that are... So we're trying to change that narrative a bit in society of what to celebrate. Similar to how the Nobel Foundation is celebrating scientists, Norrsken wants to celebrate impact entrepreneurs and put the spotlight on them more than just one day per year.
But that's a brilliant cause. I think I completely agree with you when you say when you need to make a massive change, usually it's the narrative which stops you. So if you can change the narrative, you can affect such a big change going forward. So I think it's brilliant that you guys found your focus and impact, and you're trying to bring limelight to the impact entrepreneurship sector. Norrsken started a few years ago. You were with Niklas in the start. What have you seen in these 3-4 years? Has there been any change, or is it the same impact cycle? Like how?
Yeah, I mean, I wish I could say that from where we started to where we are today is a straight line, and we knew exactly what we were doing. But the reality has been like this, because we were complete beginners. We didn't know anything about the impact world, and every day has been a new lesson, basically. So I would say everything has changed. When we started, we thought that we would build our own teams and organizations and solve one problem that we decided top down. Because one of the earlier things that we focused on was corruption. So we built an anti-corruption solution for West Africa, and we spent a lot of time and energy and money into that, but realized that actually that's really hard. That's like the state of Sweden saying like, okay, there's one area that we should focus on, and we will build that company ourselves. I mean, that very rarely works. What works is when you have a passionate entrepreneur who's super frustrated with a problem, that comes and says, this is what I've seen, and I'm going to solve this. I'm going to work my ass off in making change here. But I need some capital, and I need some support with finding the right engineers. So we've changed from trying to decide ourselves what area to focus on and build it ourselves to now rely on entrepreneurs entirely, and their passion and grit and ability to build teams and so on. And then maybe to the best of our capabilities, support them with our networking capital and infrastructure. So I would say that that's the biggest shift in Norrsken. But then there are 1,000 things in addition to that has changed as well. But that's like the big paradigm thinking change for us, that we went from thinking that we could do things ourselves to realizing that, no, actually it's entrepreneurs, and we can't possibly do anything ourselves as good as they can.
That's really very interesting, because that could have been the turning point for how the organization was evolving. Because when you are in a creator mode, you are very much in love with your creation. You become focused around one thing. So if you're creating a song, your entire world becomes that song. But if you at the time kind of switch your focus to being a catalyst, so maybe you are supporting, so you become a song creation studio or a production house, then you can support so big a rush of creativity that it can all go out. So brilliant.
Yeah, that's a great way of putting it.
So creation to catalyst. So that's where Norrsken went. So that's great. You are now helping entrepreneurs realize their dreams and go forward. If I may ask, what are some concrete ways that entrepreneurs can get support, or let's put it the other way around? How does Norrsken support impact? Like, what are 2 or 3 levers or arms or broad?
Yeah, so roughly you could divide it into 3 areas. Area 1 is that we've created something called Norrsken House, which is an ecosystem for impact entrepreneurs. So it's basically a place on Birger Jarlsgatan in central Stockholm that subsidizes the rent, so makes it really cheap to sit here, and has created a wonderful dynamic, vibrant environment for people to come and work in. So we think it makes it easier to recruit for the companies to sit here. And in this ecosystem, we've also brought in a lot of partners. We have more than 70 partners. And the aim for us with that is to that the partners help out with all the things that are boring when you start a company, or difficult or tedious or time consuming, but not part of the core business. So, Nordea can come in and help out with banking services. PwC can help out with accounting. Amazon can help out with web storage, cloud storage, and so on and so on. So you can focus on your core business. Now, it's not perfect in any way, but we think that maybe by creating this platform and infrastructure supporting the entrepreneurs, we can maybe increase the likelihood of their success a little bit. So that's one thing that we do. Then the other thing is that we've raised a VC fund, an impact VC fund that invests in impact startups. So there we're looking for businesses that have both an underlying business model, but inherently in that business model, they make the world better. So for every additional unit that they sell, they solve a societal or environmental problem a little bit as well. Historically, impact investing was always viewed as worse investing. You have to compromise with return and profitability. But we actually think that today that's changed. It's a comparative advantage to be an impact company because it's easier to recruit, to sell, to get partners, to get PR, and so on. So we think that not only is this a mispriced asset class where you can make good returns, but it's also going to be a super important way to complement all the other work that is being done in society to solve the biggest challenges that we're facing. So that's the second thing we do. So the first is the house, the second is investment. And then the third is when entrepreneurs come to us, as we discussed, with an urgent problem that they're trying to solve, and they have basically a very clear roadmap of how that will happen. And we see that we can be a catalyst in making that happen. So, for example, during the spring when Corona hit Sweden, there were some entrepreneurs from the university hospital in Stockholm, Karolinska, that came to us and said that we have some contacts that can enable us to set up Corona testing very quickly and efficiently and build automated processes around that. But there's no one who will fund us for this. And we need help with the tech and we need help with recruiting and so on. So we help them both bring in investors, and we invested ourselves. And then we help them recruit developers and just the management team and so on. And then together we built this testing lab that now accounts for almost 20% of all the PCR tests in Sweden. So it's those kind of things we really love. Another is there's some researchers that have found a potential truly transformative way of dealing with mental illness through a new treatment based on the active ingredient in magic mushroom called psilocybin. There is a research project in Karolinska that we're supporting that can have a really transformative impact on psychiatry and treatment of mental illness. Also, again, passionate entrepreneurs who come to us who wouldn't be able to find funding anywhere else. So that's the third thing we do.
So the third thing is your so this is different from your VC fund.
Yeah, because the VC fund is just here's a bag of money.
Okay.
And we're quite hands off then. But the third thing is we get involved operationally and support the team to really help accelerate their growth in a very short period of time.
Okay, brilliant. You talked about rocket fuel and partners of the partners. Just from our experience, a companion has been a rocket fuel partner for Norrsken now for 2 years. We have found very interesting teams when we are there at Norrsken, having some of our events. I think we have found it to be a win-win relation because we are measured from state in terms of creating cooperative impact and entrepreneurship activity, like kind of helping entrepreneurs start up. And then we find teams who are looking for these services. So I think that program, at least for Companion's sake, works brilliantly.
It makes me so happy to hear. This is the intention, exactly what you're describing. And I think we're every day learning something to make that even more perfect. But we're not perfect in any way yet. But we're moving in a good direction there with the help of all the entrepreneurs here and our partners. So, yeah.
So one or two more things while we are on the services that you're offering to the entrepreneurs. We have heard about the startup climate action, for example. Now, where is that? Is that part of one of these initiatives, or is it something that you are doing across these initiatives?
I mean, we have these three major areas. And then we do other stuff on the side, test things to see, because this is what our strategy is like right now. But in order to know what our strategy will be next year, we need to test different things. So Startup Climate Action is one of these things that we're testing of, can we perhaps work with partners to set up accelerators for specific industries or areas, like finding startups solving the climate problem. We're also, we haven't even talked about this, but we started out in Stockholm and now we're expanding to East Africa. So we're setting up a similar thing in Kigali. That's a massive area for us, but that sort of falls under the house part organizationally. So that's what I didn't think of bringing it up before. But this is something I hope we can talk about too, because East Africa is just an incredible region and we hope to be very involved there as well. And then we're trying new things all the time. So we have maybe, I think, 6 or 7 parallel small projects simmering under the surface to see which of these are going to work and which makes sense. And then some won't, and then we just shut them down. Some we see really fantastic traction, and then we run on that.
Okay, so you're yourself working on more like the scale up method, like you are testing the market, how it works. And I think something
Exactly.
which worked quite well last year was the Impact Week. But I think this year, the entire pandemic kind of.
Yeah, we were hoping to do the Impact Week this year as well, but it's pushed to August next year instead.
Hmm.
This is another thing that we're doing is just creating based on the Nobel Week. Basically, we're
Yeah.
creating 1 week to just celebrate impact entrepreneurs in a way that's really enthusiastic, energizing, fun, and then connecting impact entrepreneurs with students, with investors, with partners, so that it's really a week to maybe help them accelerate their growth a little bit.
Okay, you mentioned Kigali.
Mm.
So in Kigali, are you taking just the house model or the full model of
The full
Norrsken?
model, because we think what and this is our hypothesis, it might change, but we think that what has worked well for Norsken is that we have the
Mm.
house, we have the investment, and we have this third leg as well. And we're doing exactly the same thing in Rwanda now, but we're building the biggest hub for entrepreneurship in East Africa. And we're now constructing the house in
Mhm.
Kigali. We're renovating an old campus area and building new parts next to it as well. But parallel with that, we're setting up an Africa VC fund. So similar to the VC fund that we have in Europe, we're creating the same for Sub-Saharan Africa.
Okay.
And we're also setting up a small seed fund for Rwanda because it's so
Okay.
important to be able to support some of the entrepreneurs that we will work with there with smaller tickets as well. And then in parallel with that, exploring things to do together with partners in East Africa. Because there are so many organizations that know the region so much better than us, have so much better programs and content, and
Okay.
really just trying to build on their fantastic work.
Brilliant. A couple of questions from I was thinking from let's change the focus to startups a little
Mm.
bit. Now you have, let's say, three main offer areas. Like it's the house, it's the VC fund, and there are certain startups where Norken becomes hands-on, as you
Yeah.
were saying. The management team at times goes in and support. You try to
Mm.
locate funding for them, kind of open the mind and become big. That's
Yeah.
the message or the support coming from Norken. Is it different types or stages of startups that can fit in different model? Like if
Yeah.
I am a startup founder, or if there is somebody in the audience who is a startup founder, where should they start?
Uh, Depends a little bit on their size, but I think in general in the house it's more early stage companies, and
Mm.
that was for practical reasons first, just because the way that the house was created it wasn't great if you were a bigger team, because then you want your own office, you want to be able to build your own culture within four walls,
Mm.
and the house is more open space and it has some meeting rooms and stuff like that, but it wasn't great for bigger teams. Now we've expanded a little bit
Okay.
next door. So now we have more office space, and we're looking to expand even further so that we can cater to different journeys of a startup's growth. But I think just from a practical perspective, we're more leaning towards earlier stage. So coming
Okay.
in when you have maybe an idea, or you're just putting together the company, or you're starting to sell. But we would love to support companies throughout their journey.
Mm.
But just you have to start somewhere. It's hard to
Yeah.
be perfect in every way from the first day, and so it was more focused on earlier stage. But if someone wants to get in touch with us, there are different ways. It depends on what it is that you're looking for. If you want to sit in the house, then just go to norkenhouse.org and apply.
Mm.
We look at that all the time, and since a lot of the companies are growing quickly here and they're
Mm.
moving out, and we have natural transition all the time. So it's we're always looking for new fantastic impact startups to come and sit here in the house. If you're looking for investments, then you can just go to our website and reach out to the fund, or email me or someone in the team. We are now, I think we're screening close to 1,500 companies per year for investment, because it's more than just Sweden. We're looking for companies all over the world basically now with the fund, although most of them will be in Europe. But
Okay.
pretty much anyone we have a global mandate, but it's easier for us to assess the company if they're closer to where we are. But then they can just reach out as well. And if they want us to get involved in the project, then they also just reach out and present the problem and the opportunity and how this can be a thriving, impactful business long term.
Okay. Speaking about the fund, because you mentioned it, how big is it? What kind of focus is it? Is it pre-seed, seed, later stage? Like,
it's 110 million euros, so 1.2 billion Swedish kroners, and it's focused on seed is so European seed is often quite small, so that might be a little bit too small. So usually late stage seed to B or C round, and we just did an investment in Northvolt, which is probably the higher end of the scale, but that most of the companies that we're investing in are ticket sizes of maybe 5 million. So the round might be 20, 25 million, something like that, 30 million. We're quite opportunistic and not super strict on this, but I would say late stage seed to maybe B or C round.
B or C. And
depending on the size of the round.
Okay. And when you talk about your internal investments where teams is more hands-on, which is the non-VC part, what is the side? If we talk purely about the money side, what is that? Is that
so we just to take the lab as an example, we invested 40 million.
Okay.
Basically, because what was needed in April when we did this investment was to buy machinery that could do PCR tests and sampling and so on, and that was quite expensive, and you had to build something big enough to even get on the order books of the because everyone was facing these machines all over the world. So it was needed 40 million, and we took that risk, but then that was a little bit too big for Norrsken to be exposed to that kind of 40 million ourselves. So then we brought in a consortium of other investors, which took our investment down to 20 million. So we sold 20 million to other investors immediately, basically. So that's one size. In the psilocybin project with Karolinska, we've donated 12 million to that. During Corona, we set up something called Action Against Corona, and then it was everything from 1 million to an educational initiative in East Africa to educate doctors there about how to treat Corona patients, and that was just a million. We invested in a robot facility in Denmark that was 1 million as well. So it depends.
But Action Against Corona, was it Norrsken only, or was it also consortium? Did you build a consortium around?
Yeah, always consortium. Norrsken is just, we're a tiny drop in the ocean, and the problems we're trying to solve are massive waves or tsunamis, and we have to work together with partners and with entrepreneurs to really be able to make systemic shift. We can't do that alone. So we always try to leverage partnerships and bring in others who are much better than us in different areas.
Okay, but in the last few years, you have as a team and as Norrsken gained a lot of insight in the impact sector. So let's take another question from the startup side. Just thinking, what is it like when you are investing in a startup through VC fund or through your own initiative to a startup, or kind of picking them up from an initiative like that Active Action Corona or Climate Action? What is it that you look for?
Yeah,
it's a very difficult question, but
this has been refined by VC over the past 30 years. So it's basically four things. It's the team, and the team is it's easy to say the word team, but it's difficult to assess. Like, you're looking for a particular drive and passion and understanding of the problem and so on. Then you're looking for the idea.
Okay.
And the idea is, it's like, what is the problem that you're solving? How big is the addressable market, and so on? What is the actual idea? Then you're looking at the product. The product is really understanding, is this something that users will love, like truly love? Because there's so many products out there, and 99% of products are like, but in order to really build something that scales and where you can see that this has massive opportunity, you have to have users that will love it. So we need to understand, at least from maybe an MVP, or it has to be a prototype in place so we can see like what will the user interface be like. And then the last thing is execution. So how does the company execute and work together. So those are like the four things that basically everyone looks for as a VC. And then what separates us from all others is that we also look for the impact of the company. And for us, we are completely impact agnostic. So we don't care which SDG you're solving, or if this problem or this problem, as long as it's inherent in the business model. So it's not something that you can choose to add or remove. It has to be in the business model, so that for every additional unit you sell, you make the world a little bit better.
Okay. So impact has to be inherent, and then you're seeing team is very important. Idea, team, the love of customer for the prototype, and you mentioned the word prototype, and execution. Two things over there. One is, are you looking for revenue? Like, how important is revenue? Because when you are building an impact business, it could be a situation. Because, for example, when I'm consulting in impact organizations, some of them have a very different means of building their initial model. They go through some funding levers first, like government funding, public funding, build a project, and then kind of roll out their commercial side. So how important is the revenue in this equation?
Yeah, so for the VC fund, it has to be an underlying business model. So our investors look at this and say, we have to be able to make returns that are market rate. So long term, VC funds aim for 20% IRR, and that's what we were aiming for as well with the fund. So if you want the VC fund as an investor, you have to have an underlying potential business model. I mean, you don't have to be revenue generating now, but it has to be obvious what the path to revenue looks like. So that's the VC fund. When you look at the stuff that Norrsken Foundation invests in, then it doesn't have to be. But then impact has to be super high. So it's, I mean, you can basically look at it in two axes, right? One axis is impact and the other is revenue. So if it has massive potential for impact, then it's okay to have very low revenue. But if it has low impact, then it has to have more revenue. So it's a trade-off there. It's not a trade-off, but it's a graph where we basically select the initiatives based on the combination of revenue and impact. So if you don't have any business model, then you better have massive potential for impact.
Okay, that's very good. And then that shows us as well that you have two very distinct offers. So if your model is can generate market level returns in terms of revenues, and the IRR is, as you're saying, 20% or higher, then of course VC fund could be your obvious choice. But if you are massive on the impact and the revenues are not very sure initially, or you are still testing that, then your internal drive which you give to the entrepreneurs, that's the right fit. And then community somehow fits in everything.
Yeah. The one thing I would say, though, is that we prefer businesses that have underlying business models, just because it creates resources so that you can scale the solution. Like building something that only depends on donations, for example, long term, will struggle, because you will have to spend so much time as the leader of that business just fundraising and thinking about who is our next sponsor and what happens if that person doesn't sponsor. It takes so much time and energy. So we prefer when there are business models that have some sort of revenue generating opportunity, because that can fund scaling long term. And as I said, if you remember to start with, we have to support businesses and organizations that have scale, because otherwise we can just buy malaria mosquito nets.
Okay. Good. How has the ecosystem around you evolved? So, because you've done a lot of initiatives, like Impact Week was there, that Corona action, you guys came in very quickly, addressed the problems, made investments. Climate action is there. You are opening in Kigali and all. So Norrsken is doing a lot. But how is the journal ecosystem evolving in the last 4 or 5 years?
Yeah, the thing I would say is that actually, 5 years ago, there was a clear distinction between the startup ecosystem and the impact startup ecosystem. And the traditional startup ecosystem was much better served. But now those two are blending. So it's very hard to make a distinction between the impact startup system and the typical startup system. And I think that's fantastic, because you have access to capital. Investors are looking at these companies in a completely different new light, and it's easy to recruit. When you go to the Royal Institute of Technology in Stockholm and you try to recruit developers. All of them, and I'm not exaggerating, all of them basically are looking for meaningful work, and not just going to a typical like gaming company, or like everyone is asking like, what's the purpose of your company? And so that has been a major shift, that it's easier to recruit, it's easier to get funding, it's easier to get PR. Customers are asking for solutions that have net positive impact on the planet, and not just something that will make the owners rich. So it's been a massive mental shift in society over the past 5 years, and the support system around startups have changed as well for impact companies. So I would say in the past 5 years, massive shift.
And I think Norrsken would have a big role to play, because you guys are focusing on shifting the narrative. When you start shifting the narrative, something comes in the center space, and I wish that into mainstream.
I wish I could say that it's because of Norrsken, but maybe we've played like a tiny role in this. But it's more, it's the fantastic work by the entrepreneurs who are showing that it is possible to build incredible, fast-growing companies and solve societal problems at the same time. It's also like the awareness of students who are just diving into these topics more at a younger age. It's everything from Greta to governments. So it's Norrsken has played a tiny role in this. It's more a societal change that is happening.
Brilliant. So the society is moving towards impact, and that means that today's attendees, we have 100 people joined with us right now. So message to everyone: focus on impact, build it at the core of your business model, because I think that's where we see some gaps. And coming to gaps on the entrepreneurship side, what do you think are, maybe again, it's a very general question, some of the, or one of the main mistakes or something that startups need to avoid to scale? So something like, what could be a pitfall?
I mean, I can tell you 1,000 things you can do wrong. But so the one thing I would say is that as an impact startup today, have confidence that you have actually a competitive advantage. It will be easier for you to recruit. It will be easier to raise funding. It will be easier to get PR, and that has changed. Like you are now in the driver's seats, and you can change the world with your business, and that it's just completely different. So than what it was 5 years ago. So come in with self-confidence and really know that you are. It's not like normal startups have an advantage any longer. It's not true.
Okay. That's a brilliant thought. I'll take two quick observations, and then we'll move to Marina and we'll take audience questions. One is that the world was going just fine, and there came a small virus, and then everything changed. How has that changed?
It's changed for absolutely society. It's changed everything. But for startups, nothing has changed. If you're a startup, you are battling for your life every day, and you don't know if your company is going to be around next week. So for most startups, they're like, yes, okay, this is welcome to our life. This is how uncertain life is for most startups. I can't remember who said it, but like starting a company is like chewing glass and staring into the abyss every day. It is tricky, and as a founder, you're lonely, and things change quickly, and you don't know what the world will look like the next week. So, but then you can talk on a society level. Of course, the way we work will change, the way we interact will change. Society's requirements for being able to handle this better in the future will change. How we view our healthcare system will change. So there will be big, massive changes like that. But for startup, nothing has changed.
Okay. One last one. Where do you guys see yourself in the next 10 years? So like in 10 years, we have that Agenda 2030 right on the dot.
Yeah, I have no idea. We have a plan that stretches for a year, basically, and even that long is tricky. But what I hope for society in 10 years is that we've reached a point where we truly measure the negative externalities of a business properly. So what does that mean in plain English? It means that everyone knows what the net impact of a business is. But right now, when you think of it, it's absolutely perverse that a company can build and sell a product and be taxed on that product, but no one actually knows what the impact on the planet is. And now we're reaching an age of transparency where it will be possible to know exactly what your impact on the planet and on society and your employees is. And I think 10 years from now, we will look at impact on the balance sheet, on the income statement, in the same way as we look at profit. So you'll be able to say that Coca-Cola, okay, you're selling for 30 billion, but you have a net negative impact of 5 billion, and that should be added onto your cost, and we can tax that. And so that is super exciting, I think, because then we can use the current economic model to actually drive a better world. And because I don't see any other solution than capitalism, but we need to change it a little bit so that the true net impact of businesses are actually taken into consideration when we price product, when we tax companies, and so on. So that's something that I'm very hopeful will happen soon. It's already being developed. It's building on all the impact measurement and impact reporting out there. But this is something that I feel very optimistic about, because it means that we can use the capitalistic economic model we have today, but change it around a little bit so that we can build a long-term sustainable future.
And maybe it's also a yen bag, or kind of a bridge towards maybe a future of more sustainable, some new system, maybe an overnight system change at a global level with so many different factors, countries, economies linked to it. It's difficult. So maybe this is the way.
This has happened before. So in 1929, you had the Great Depression, and the Great Depression came for many reasons. But one of the reasons was because every company could use their own accounting, and there was no. And in 1933, you had the U.S. Security Act when they brought in auditing. So all of a sudden, you agreed on a global framework of how you should view accounting, and this changed the risk taking and where capital went and so on. So we can do the same thing. Because right now everyone is reporting impact in different ways. We need a global framework like auditing to really have a clear view of what the true impact of a business is. And when we have that, then everything will change.
Okay, brilliant. Marina, I'm going to bring you in so that we can take some of the audience questions as well in the last 10 minutes. So again, everybody bear with me 10 seconds on the technology. Let's see. Marina is coming in. Yes, I think so. Hi, Marina. Yes, over to you.
Hi, Marina.
Let's see what audience are saying.
Hi, Naimo. So thank you so much for this very interesting conversation you had and this Q&A. I think you've answered many of the questions, some of the ones that came also from the audience. I think everybody's excited because, yes, there are a lot of impact entrepreneurs, but the big challenge is when you really are focused on impact is to also remind yourself of the business model and the scalability, and to know that the Norrsken Foundation is there to help entrepreneurs to get that part right as well is really valuable, I think, and many might have not known about that clearly. So we have a lot of questions, so I don't want to take time, and I want to give space to those who are joining, which are actually many today. So we have some practical questions and some are a bit more, they require a bit more of a discussion, I guess. So which one would you like to start with, Erik?
Whatever you prefer.
Let's do
a practical one first and then a bigger one after.
Sounds great. Yes, so I will start with Helena. Elena Isolde Stongård. She said she emailed you, your team, and she perhaps didn't get a reply yet, and she was wondering, I'm reading into your question, what is the best way to stand out? We assume that you have a lot of emails from impact entrepreneurs. So how do you stand out when you contact?
Yeah, it depends what it is that she's after. If she's after to sit in the house, then go to the house page. If she's after investments, then go to the investment page. If she doesn't get a response, she can always email me. I'm at erik@norrsken.org. So I look at everything and I try to respond within 24 hours in general.
Sounds great. That was also Silvia's very practical question. What's your email, Erik? That's perfect. So yes, then we have a question from Ebba. She was commenting on some things you were saying about how to build your impact startup. And she was wondering if you advise to use the lean approach when you work with as a startup, as an impact startup.
Yeah, I'm not an expert on the lean model, but from what I know, it seems like a very good model. What I would say in general is that don't rely too much on strategies and processes, and just try things. And the most important thing is just to move forward all the time and build a momentum and try things out. And then some things will work for you and some others. So just try it. I mean, if you like the lean model, try it and see how it works.
Sounds great. Great to know that there is no right or wrong method. It's more about reaching the goals in the end. Yeah. And then we have a question from Lauren Edin, who asks, how does Norrsken helps in building a team, recruit talent? Do you advise on how to do that properly?
Yeah, so this has been requested by a lot of the members that sit in the house. And now we have a fantastic person to drive this at Norrsken called Raman. So again, if you need to reach out, just Raman, Raman, @norrsken.org. Who will help you put in touch all the people who are reaching out to us to work at impact startups. And he can also help out with HR policies and structures and just share everything that we've done at Norrsken. So he's available for the members with help and advice, and can even consult and be part of the team for a short period of time.
Great. Another question from Anjali Paul. She's asking, are you working on creating the global impact accounting that you mentioned just now?
Yes, this is one of the things that I'm most excited about. So there are 150 different ways to report impact by just listed companies in the world. But the one that I prefer the most right now is called Impactweighted accounting. And it's been developed by Harvard Business School together with Ronald Cohen, who started Bridges in the UK. And it basically allows you to put a dollar value on the net impact that the business have. So you can really compare it to the revenue and profit and balance sheet and income statement. So check that out. All the resources available publicly online. If you Google Harvard Business School and Impactweighted accounting. And if someone has knowledge about this or ideas of how to accelerate the implementation of this, then reach out to me as well, because this is a fantastic area that I'm super excited about. And I'm a total beginner. So I'm learning every day something new connected to this.
Sounds great. Then I will take some questions from Alex. He had two. So one is in regard to the work in Kigali that you mentioned. Is there any way you are ensuring that the profits stay within the countries when you work abroad with impact?
I mean, so from Norrsken's perspective, we are setting up a local business in Rwanda. I mean, it's fully owned by the foundation, but it is a local business that will be taxed locally and so on, because it's really important for us to make sure that if there's businesses, they should be taxed locally so that the tax can go back to the government to build the welfare system of that country. But we don't have any, when we invite international investors, then if they make money there, they will take the returns back to their investors in turn. So that's not something that we focus on a lot more than what we do ourselves. But happy to take any advice on how to structure this in a good way if Alex, I think, had any suggestions.
Yeah, that's great. Yes. So another question from Alex was referring to your point about using the capitalist system as it is today to, shift focus on to having an impact business, because anyways, it's kind of it's kind of trendy now, and so it really works also from a perspective. And he was asking, you consider using the donut economic as an alternative model rather than the capitalistic one? Would you start imagining working in that kind of paradigm?
Yeah, we've looked at that. We've looked at so many models. I think and this is really a longer conversation, and I'm not the expert, but there are some idealistic systems that would be fantastic to reach to, and then there's the reality of where we are today. And we try to strike a balance between going there and being a little bit pragmatic. And the good thing with impact-weighted accounting is that it changes impact from being a fringe thing, a sustainability report, basically, to being at the center of the business, so that every business is an impact business. and not just what we traditionally now call impact startups. Every business becomes an impact business, and every business has to transparently show what their net impact is. And in order to reach that, you need government regulation, of course, but we think that it's a possible way to achieve that. But probably not the perfect way. And maybe we can incorporate thinking from the donut model into this as well. So any suggestions, super welcomed.
Yeah, that's great to hear, Erik. I think it's definitely a step forward based on how we are doing things right now. And if Alex, you have any suggestion, then it's great that Norrsken is open for ideas. So the last question that I see here is from Tobias Tagenson, and he was wondering, you describe how you support a startup on their journey, and what about how you can support them to build their organization to support their innovation? So not only how do you build your startup, but also how you build the organization around your initial startup phase. So he was wondering, for example, if you can. If you take inspiration from the TL companies and other kind of models on how to build organizations.
Yeah,
if you advise.
I think what he's referring to the TL model is that when you have non-hierarchical traditional structures, but I might be interpreting the question wrong. We've tried that in one of our organizations called 29K. In most others, we've built more traditional structures when you have a clear CEO and there are hierarchies. Just because, in my experience, you can move faster with that. But super open again to explore an experiment here. We are not experts in those kind of models, but as I said, we were trying to do that a little bit with 29K, and the results are very encouraging so far. So maybe we'll change that around a little bit.
Yes, that sounds great. And we have a couple of questions about, how investments, I guess, from the VC fund are invested from a gender perspective. Both Ebba and Stefania were wondering, 99% of funding in Sweden go to men. What does number look like at Norrsken?
Yeah, it's not perfect. I think we are closer to 35, or if it's 37% that go to female-founded startups. So this is something that we're very focused on. It's not 50-50 yet, but the pool of companies that are coming to us are not 50-50 either. So this is a topic that is of critical importance for the future of our society, and VCs play a critical role in that. But it's also encouraging women to start more companies and building more role models that are female as well. But gender is one aspect. I think there are other aspects of diversity that are equally important. So making sure that there are role models from entrepreneurs that are not from Sweden and so on. This is a complex question that we're thinking a lot about, but we're not perfect.
Okay.
Sounds great. Yes. Do we have time, Naimo? We have a couple of questions.
We are on the dot with 11.
Yeah.
One probably more question, because I was thinking somebody was asking, like, how many investments have you done? Maybe it's a question both for VC fund and your.
Yeah. So I think the VC fund has done around 25 investments so far
already.
Yeah, and then we've created maybe 5 businesses ourselves in Norrsken, 5 or 6, something like that. And then we've done maybe donations to 5 more. Yeah, and then I mean it's a theoretical question, because you could say that we invest in all the members, we subsidize the cost of the rent as well ourselves. Okay. But the direct investments, 25-ish from the fund. I think there might be 2 more, but they're not announced yet.
Okay.
And then some of the businesses we built ourselves, and donations as well.
And the size of the house right now, or the cumulative impact of the house on entrepreneurs, like how big is that?
We have 130 companies in the house here in Stockholm. In Kigali, it will be twice as big, or slightly bigger than twice as big.
Okay, brilliant. I think we can close the session now, Marina. I know you have, there are more questions over there, but maybe we can send out a follow-up email after that. Erik, we'd like to thank you so much for joining.
Thank you. This is so much fun. And again, anyone who wants to reach out, just do that over our website or email me, or I'm on Engellau-Nilsson at Twitter. So just reach out to me. We try to respond to everything as quickly as we can.
That's great. That's great. Thank you so much to all our attendees for joining in and making this a great discussion. We'll see you guys again on 21st with Per Hedberg. He'll be coming in and talking about Sting and acceleration models there.